to the Way We Work podcast. It is such a privilege that you have joined us today. We are continuing on a series that we've been on, sort of grounded in Ecclesiastes 3, looking at different times. That there's a time to plan, there's a time to become, there's a time to be bold. And I'm really excited that our conversation today is centered around becoming. Yes, becoming. Michelle Obama has a book, Becoming. But I think on our journey as women or men who show up in the workplace, show up in the world, we are consistently becoming. And it is a privilege to have someone who's been on the podcast before. Maria join me today to talk about a time to become. So Maria, would you say hi to us before we get started?
Hello.
It's good
So glad
see
to
you
be
again.
here. Yes, good to see you.
So we're going to play a game.
Okay.
As is so on brand for us. But this is actually like less like a fun game and more like a reflective, sort of pensive game.
Okay.
So we have 3 prompts. And so you get to pick which one you want to go with. And then you can respond based on what your past self would have said or would have answered. And then what your future self would answer.
Yeah.
Which I think is really cool. So do you want me to pick the first one for you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I'm going to pick this one. What scared me the most? Your past self or your future self? I'm thinking about now. I'm
Yes.
scared of cockroaches in my not my past or my
Yes.
future, just my present
Right now.
self.
Yeah.
But what's been something that you feared in the past that maybe you don't fear anymore?
Okay, it's gonna sound like we're just going into the deep, so
Yes.
please.
Fine. Those questions are very deep.
Yeah, I feared being seen.
Interesting.
I
like
fear,
visibility.
yeah, any form of visibility. So even if I did things, I wouldn't want my name attached to it. Like I just want like an anonymity in just different projects. Because I just feared what people would think.
That's real. That's a real one. A lot of people want the fame that comes with visibility, but you lose so much as well in
That's
it.
true,
And I
yeah.
think we are in a culture that sort of romanticizes visibility.
Yeah.
And so people don't sort of sit in the awareness of what it costs.
Yes.
What is something that you fear in the future?
Doing things that don't matter, just to go to get the end of my life and realize that that was so not important.
good.
It was a waste.
That is so, because I would say regret.
Yes.
It's like
yes.
to look back and then to be like, it didn't add up to anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you get to pick the next one. But those are
Okay.
really good responses.
What I cared about the most. Past me, this is related. So past me, just cared about people's opinions. I was all my mind would play is just what would so and so think if I did this,
Yeah.
if I did that.
Are you a recovering people pleaser or
Yes.
are you recovered?
I'm not recovered.
Behind you.
No.
I think women everywhere, we have to talk a little bit more about this sort of that innate
Yes.
feeling to want
Yeah.
to be liked and sometimes to be liked more than to be respected.
Yeah.
And that's like a thing.
Yes.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
a really good one. What did you care about? What do you think you'll care about in the future?
Just contributing to something bigger than myself. That's something, yeah.
It's good. Having a legacy.
Yeah.
I think you already have one.
Oh God, please.
Personally, I think you already have one. Last one says, what I thought was success. What did you think success was
In the past.
in the past?
Honestly, it's
Money, 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 money.
yes, the American dream.
American.
The
Defense.
house, nice car,
Yes.
stability. Yeah, that was my definition of success. Yeah.
I had never seen a picket fence, but it was in my dreams. I was like, I don't know anyone in my
Who
life
knows?
who owns a picket fence
Yes.
or has one. But I was like, I will have a picket fence. And then what do you feel like you've defined success as when you think about the future?
Faithfulness and authenticity, to be my most authentic self
Yeah.
of how God created me to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and being faithful to that.
That's good. That's such a good pivot into our conversation on becoming, because I do think sometimes the things that get in our way of becoming all that God has created us to be is sort of our awareness of other people and we're measuring our success based on other people.
Yeah.
But I think we also betray ourselves. So when you talk about consistency and faithfulness, remaining true to the cause or
Yeah.
whatever it is that is set before you to do,
Yeah.
I have often gotten sort of stuck in, there's an expectation that people have of me.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
sometimes I'm living into that expectation and not necessarily living into who I should be.
100%.
And it takes time because unlearning takes time.
Yeah.
Before you can pivot and become, go back to the person that you would be.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you, Maria, when you think about the word becoming, what does that evoke in you? Sort of like mental picture or words? What comes up for you when you think about becoming?
I think an ongoing process. Because sometimes you have a picture of, okay, this is when I get here, when I look like this, I would have become.
Yes.
But then I think the more you walk with God, it's like you get a bigger vision of who He created you to be. So you become, and then you realize, oh, there's still more to become. We don't stop becoming until at the end of our lives.
Ooh.
Yeah.
It's both encouraging and scary at the same time because you always think you've arrived, but there's more work to be done.
Yes.
And it's like at every turn, you sort of get the job you dreamt of, and then you're like, wow, it's more work than I thought it was going to be. You make the money, or you live, in the neighborhood you always wanted to live in, and then you sit back down and you're like, wow, there's so much more ahead of it.
Yes.
What I love about, talking about it as a journey, that it sort of never ends, is this idea that we still have time. There's sort of an invitation every day to course correct, to make adjustments. What would you say is a season in the past that prepared you for who you are, where you are today?
I think I can think of like campus times, but then even just doing like different internships and some of that. I think about the tasks that were there that sometimes we may think, okay, this is not important, this is so menial, but it was developing character to sustain, so that when God opens that specific door, that I'm able to see, I'm ready, and I'm able to stay the course. I think about different opportunities I had from different professors even. And they said, okay, go apply for this, go take on this scholarship, go do this
next.
And sometimes in the middle of it, you're like, God, why am I doing this? And you're looking at someone doing like the fun, shiny thing, and you're just like, I want to be doing that.
Always. The grass is always greener.
Yes.
Always greener.
And God has you like on the backside, but in the backside, like He's training you up, He's teaching you skills.
You're growing.
Yeah, because I think about so many jobs I had that needed me to be in the social media and digital space. I wasn't the biggest fan. But for even personal projects now, I find myself now having to use those skills that I had from back then, because God's like, I'm training you so that when you have your own ministry, you have your own business, like the ins and the outs, because you've been faithful in the process.
And no season is wasted
at all.
And I think sometimes because when you're working, I think in any field, you can sometimes end up in a job where you sort of never wanted to be in that job in the first place, or you don't even see how that job sort of will take you back to the direction you want to be. But the idea that nothing is wasted, that all along we are growing. Morgan Harper Nichols has this line that says, all along you are growing. And the idea that you're consistently becoming.
100%.
But here's a scary thing, is sometimes it's happening without you knowing. Sometimes you're becoming into a version of yourself. But it's like the things that we're not intentional about, we sort of like are picking that up. Handling conflict, advocating for ourselves, learning to say no, and boundaries. And that really, like, that's the scary bit. What are you learning in this season of becoming? Because I love how you're talking about this is a journey. It really is a journey. What are you learning to hold on to lightly? Because there can be a weight of like, I have to become overnight. And I think it's really a cultural phenomenon. It's making it big while we're young. We're sort of like, we sort of idolize youth and remaining young, or we idolize wealth. And so sometimes there's a pressure of like, I need to finish all these things now. What have you learned sort of like to just hold on to lightly on this journey?
I'm learning to hold on to titles and positions very lightly.
Ooh, speak on it.
And I feel like I'm in a season where God's teaching me, not easily, but just like to allow yourself to be dispensable and replaceable. Because if you can't be replaceable, you can't be promoted. You're stuck on the same. So I'm learning right now in the becoming, who am I bringing up with me? And I teach them everything I know about my skill. Everything I know about specific like functionings with their workplace, without feeling threatened that, okay, they're going to outshine me.
And that goes back to legacy, right? We talk about living behind a legacy. Sometimes we're fighting each other because we're fighting for position. Positional authority. And so we don't want to sort of do the hard work to be respected. But we sort of just want to have the title so that then it comes with, all the allowances, and it comes with all the things. But Maria, how though? How do you actively hold titles loosely? Because I think on this continent, we are obsessed
with titles.
In the church, in the workplace, in the political spaces, we want the titles. How do you work hard at just holding that loosely?
I think part of it is like that self-awareness. For me, it has to be, I have to interrogate what are my insecurities as a person.
Good.
And maybe if my insecurity is maybe being rejected,
Yeah.
then I'll feel like if I have this title, then
Yeah.
people will respect me, because without it,
an
I don't. Yes. So the more you like work through what are my core wounds, what are my insecurities, I'm able to hold even those titles loosely.
Yeah.
And so that also whenever you are, for example, let go from a position,
Yeah.
that it's not you understanding that you've been let go and it's you who's a problem. And it's like an identity issue.
Phew. That's hard.
It is very
Because
hard.
it's inner work and it's
Yes,
healing.
100%,
It's,
yeah.
I love the sort of the awareness that I show up in every room as myself
Yes.
and my whole self. So if I'm unhealed, that shows up with me.
It does.
But I think oftentimes doing the work to be healthier, to be better,
Yeah.
noticing the insecurities sometimes is uncomfortable.
Yes.
Because if you've lived in discomfort for so long, that becomes your normal.
100%.
So when you then have to sort of step out of it, but I think that's what becoming is. Becoming is sort of like holding up a mirror,
Yeah.
and being, just being available to hear feedback from people,
Yes.
receiving that well, so that you're
Yeah.
also checking in. I always tell people like,
Yeah.
if you're in the frame, you can't see the picture. And I always say like, I have never seen myself. Like I generally don't think even when I see myself in a mirror that I've
Yeah.
seen myself. So I think part of that deep work is being open and willing to hear what other people,
Yes.
how they are thinking about you, how you come across to them.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of us, that's scary. We don't want
Yeah.
what that will bring out of us.
Yeah.
But it's the only way
100%.
to become.
Yeah.
When you talk about the future, Mary, you've already done like amazing things in the now, like just being faithful with your gifts and stewarding. You're an author, you're a podcaster, you're a research data analyst. So cool. But when you think about how you would want to be remembered by other people, especially as far as it becomes, as far as we're talking about becoming.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes we want to be remembered just for our, successes, our accolades, the things we
Yeah.
did well. But I think there's a value to modeling, especially for the next generation or for the next, the interns in the office. What does it look like to model that, like, we don't have it all together?
Yeah.
So it's when people look at us, can they see sort of like there's a striving to be better? There's
Yeah.
a striving to do it, better next time. Maybe you
Yeah.
can do it better now, but you can
Yes.
do it better next time. So when you think about the people who are closest to you, how would you want them to remember you?
And being vulnerable.
Yeah.
I think when you're thinking about the people not seeing you as perfect, things as simple as like, guys, I got that wrong and I'm sorry. And to be able to model that, like the humanity, the side of being human is an important part for me.
big.
And then just to be authentic, so that I think our authenticity gives people permission to be authentic.
It does.
So if someone close sees like, okay, this is how God made her,
Yeah.
and these are her quirks and her interests, and she's leaned into that, she's allowed people to see that and embrace it. Giving other people permission to be themselves.
That's great. Brene Brown.
Yes, absolutely love her. Yes.
Talks a lot of it, has a TED talk that's just in the millions about really vulnerability being something that we should live into and not sort of hold back. But it does give people permission. It
does.
allows people to feel like if you're always put together all the time, then there's a feeling that,
Yeah.
okay, let me wait until I'm perfect.
This is true. Yeah.
And then I'll come. And I think sometimes we have sort of modeled that, which is, really sad for me to say, in faith spaces, where it's like, get yourself together and then come.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just, that makes my heart so sad that
Yeah.
that's been the experience of so many who feel like I have to sort of like become.
Yes.
And then I show up. But there's so much becoming that
Yeah.
happens in community.
True.
How has your community in the past sort of just held your hands as you've walked through the different journeys of becoming all the different things that you are internally and then also within your workplaces?
I think they've been a safe space and they've been a place to be called out in kindness. Because I think sometimes why we fear even being criticized is because we don't always believe people's heart for us is the best.
That's true.
So within now my community, they're able to say, hey, I don't like how you handle that. Or, hey, why did you post that? Like, that's not in line with
your brand.
Yeah. Or just like your faith
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But I feel like my community has been so good of even having a better vision of who God's made me to be and calling me into that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you said we do have a limited vision
We do.
of ourselves.
It's so limited.
Yeah.
When we think we know, and I think that's what gets in the way of us
Yeah.
even sometimes inquiring of God, of other
Yes.
people, because we have this sort of idea of like we know what the big picture is,
Yeah.
but we don't.
Yeah, it's a community who will call you into that, but also pray you into that. And so if you say like, hey, I want to write a book, whatever it is, for
Right.
example,
Yeah. Yeah.
or maybe that's like writing, and someone in your community is like, hey, I've noticed you have this gift.
Yeah.
Like, have you ever thought about doing anything? So community allows us to even grow and become in the gifts that God's given us.
And that's really good because we sort of go on this journey. The world sort of forces us to become. I always say this
Yeah.
side of heaven, we're always becoming. We haven't arrived yet. And I
Yeah.
think noticing pride is sort of that awareness that like, I think I know. I enter into
Yes.
every room thinking that I know, but that's false because
Yeah.
there's always so much to learn.
Yeah.
But I love the idea of also calling out greatness in other people
100%.
because that also empowers them on their journey of becoming.
Yeah.
Before we close out, Maria, when I think about our conversation sort of being grounded in
Yeah.
Ecclesiastes 3, but just also being grounded in really in faith, when I think about our ultimate becoming,
Yeah.
right? I think about when we meet Jesus,
Yeah.
that this world does come to an end and we are
Yeah.
promised that this world does come to an
Yeah.
end. And so when you think about that ultimate day when we have become all that
Yes.
we would ever become, that we're mature, I'm peaceful in traffic, Lord, do it for me, that we are just sort of calmer.
Yeah.
What comes to your mind? How does that sort of like keep you going?
It keeps me going in the sense of two things. One is the idea, every single day I was in First John this morning, and just the idea of as we abide.
Yes.
And when it says there that love is perfected, meaning that right now that love as a fruit of the Spirit is not perfected in us. So becoming up until that day means that there's a continuous work that's happening. But for me, also becoming means contributing to something bigger
Than yourself.
than myself that kind of mirrors that great and final
So
day.
good, yeah.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Yes.
Oh, I think there's so many gems here because I think whether we know it or not, we are consistently walking this thing
100%.
out.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's a reminder to show up for practice,
day. Yeah.
like show up
Yes.
every day because every opportunity you sort of have a choice to either get angry or
Yes.
to allow it to like shape you into something. And I
Yeah.
think we consistently have opportunities that are invitations.
100%.
Even painful moments, conflict moments,
Yeah.
invitations for us to be all that God has created us to be
Yeah.
and to be so much better, to make the world a
100%.
better place. So
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for
Thanks
this
for having me.
conversation.
Yes.
Thank you for coming back. We want to say thank you to all of you for just being a part of our conversations. We are at the end of this series, but we want to encourage you to share this with a friend. If you found value here, if you've learned something new, or just been reminded of an area to really grow in this season, we want you to go ahead and share this with a colleague, with a friend, with a relative. I think it's never been easier to share content than right now because you can just hit that share button and somebody will get to know. But we are going to be back with more conversations and we want to encourage you to stay locked so that you are able to be reminded of all the different ways that we can grow. So thank you for being a part of our conversation.